introduce Anna Francese Gass. But before we get started with that, we will be recording tonight's event. But don't worry, you're muted, and the only people who will be recorded are the people in the little yellow box here who are unmuted. So when Anna first pitched me an event for her book, I agreed on the spot. Her website and now her cookbook, Heirloom Kitchen, heritage recipes and family stories from the Tables of Immigrant Women, is an amazing project. She recorded the recipes of an array of immigrant grandmothers. I mean, can you think of a more exciting food project of recipes? When I hosted her for the event, she brought a platter of the most divine spanakopita that I'd ever had, with these big chunks of feta in it. I immediately bought a copy of her book, and I made a recipe in there called pasticcio, which she described as the love child of lasagna bolognese and fettuccine alfredo, and it was amazing. It made me a hero in my household that evening. And then Anna told me that I really had to make the brodo di mamma a polpette, or the spaghetti and meatballs, and I've made it so many times now that I don't need to consult the book anymore. Please join me in welcoming to a very special Northshire Live, Anna Francese Gass.
Hi, everybody. My name is Anna. That was such a generous and lovely intro. I am a very huge fan of the bookstore. My children and I go there whenever we're in Vermont. I am in Connecticut. That is where my home is, but I visit Stratton Mountain often. And we stumbled on the bookstore one day because we were outlet shopping in Manchester, and it was love at first sight. And at the time, it was really just, I had just gotten the book deal and I was in the children's section, and I went up to someone working in the children's section and said, I have a cookbook coming out in a year, but when it comes out, I really have to do something here. And that's when she said, oh, well, you need to speak to Mr. Wood. So that's how our relationship began. We spoke before the book came out. We are so incredibly supportive of authors, and in a world of technology, it is so lovely to go into a book and smell books and feel books. And I am a true proponent of reading a book. So when Heirloom Kitchen came out, we've done a few events, actually. We had a talk, we had a lovely dinner, which is to date still one of my favorite events. And I look forward to many years of coming into the store and enjoying it. So today, for those of you that might not know, we are making Monica's Perfect Pierogies. And I call them the perfect pierogi because I think they are quite perfect. The immigrant woman that I cooked with is a woman by the name of Monica Sator, and she is a photographer, but also a very, very skilled home chef. And she came here from Poland as a college student, but brought with her, like all the immigrant women in this book, her mother's recipes. And of course, one of those recipes is these pierogies. They are very traditional. She has gone on to riff on them herself, filling them with ricotta, spinach, things like that. Although I'm not allowed to tell her mother, if she ever comes from Poland to visit, that Monica has gone elsewhere with the recipe, but we're just gonna do them very traditionally. I've done a few things in advance. If you're cooking along with me, you can shoot out questions, or if you have general cooking questions, this hour is for you. And I am just honored that you're here spending this lovely evening with me. So just to let you know what I've done in advance for, the magic of TV purposes, I have made the pierogi dough, which we're going to talk about, and I have it just resting lovely. And I have started the filling, and I can explain why. But let's just start with the dough, because that's the first thing you're going to do when you're making pierogies. So in the recipe, I do recommend Polish flour. If you live in a place that you just can't get international international ingredients, don't fret. You can make these with AP flour. I've made them with AP flour and they've come out just fine. Another great substitution, if you can get it, is pasta flour, because basically pasta flour is very fine flour. It's usually called tipo 00, TIPO 00. That's what the Italians call it. This is just very, very fine, supple flour, and it makes for a very tender pierogi. So this has got very Polish writing on it. I got it in the Polish deli in my town, and I love it. That goes into a bowl with very hot water, because if you ever made dumplings or basically anything that requires a filling, that hot water really tenderizes the gluten. So that's why if you're making Chinese dumplings or pierogies, they use the same method. It's hot water with the flour. So I love that. I love that I was going into different kitchens, but really sometimes learning the same methods from totally separate parts of the world. It's got an egg in there. You just get it nice and soft, make a nice supple dough, and then just set it aside. While it's resting, you go on to the filling, which is very simple as well. Monica made a very funny joke when I was cooking with her. She said, yeah, Polish people, we eat a lot of pierogies because we eat a lot of potatoes because Poland's really cold, and you can grow a potato in a rock. And I just thought that was so funny, just to think of the fact that potatoes really can grow anywhere. It is a very, very strong and resilient crop. So, all right, we got our water boiling. I'm just going to turn that down. So what I did was I boiled 6 Yukon Gold potatoes. She does Yukon Gold. I agree with that method because Yukon Golds are just more buttery. They're tasty, but if you have russets or something else, have at it. Peel them, put them in the water, cold water with potatoes. You always want to start on cold, because if you start potatoes in hot water, the outside actually cooks before the inside does. And you don't want that. You want even cooking with potatoes. So always start with cold, let them boil. After about 10 minutes, a medium potato is going to be nice and soft. Now, if you're going to invest in some cooking utensils, I know some people don't like having too many gadgets, but I think a potato ricer is essential. Thanksgiving, you don't want lumpy potatoes. Your potato ricer just creates the most perfect potato. And you never want to take a hand mixer to potatoes, because your potatoes will quickly turn into glue. So a ricer keeps that from happening. You just put the hot potato in here, press it down, and you get, the reason it's called a ricer is it looks almost like rice. Once it's all riced, it is just a beautiful sponge for anything you want to put in there. Butter, sour cream, salt. In this case, we're putting in farmer's cheese. Farmer's cheese is incredibly popular in Eastern Europe. A lot of recipes have farmer's cheese. It's used very much in blintzes. A lot of Danishes will have farmer's cheese. I say it's kind of a cross between ricotta and cottage cheese. So if, again, you can't get farmer's cheese, no sweat, soft, small curd cottage cheese works perfectly. So, and that's the great thing about all these recipes. And also these women coming from other countries, when they first got here, we're pretty spoiled now. We can get almost anything we want in our local grocery store. Most grocery stores have pretty primo international food sections. But these women had to adapt, they had to moderate. So they were very great about telling me substitutions. So what I did was, when the potatoes were super hot, I went ahead and added the farmer's cheese and mixed it all in. Now that I have the farmer's cheese in there, I can add a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. And this guy's just going to hang out for a minute. And the reason he's going to hang out is because if these potato satchels weren't decadent enough, Monica actually adds bacon and onion into the pierogi. And then some of that bacon and onion gets saved and served on the outside. So while you have this lovely bacon and onion dressing on the outside, when you go in to eat your pierogi, you get little lovely pockets of bacon and onion as well. So this is not probably on your Weight Watchers menu, but we're going to make an exception and have some fun. Also, if you are a vegetarian, no sweat, no bacon, no needed. I've made them without the bacon, and they're really good without. Don't skimp on the onion though. I do like a little bit of onion. Now, what do I have in front of me? I have a very big slab of Polish bacon, which I got at the Polish store. If you can't get Polish bacon, or what they call Polish bacon, it's basically slab bacon, and you can get that in the grocery store. Even Boar's Head makes a very thick bacon that you can use. You know, it's all about the smoking. The Polish bacon has a little different smoke to it, but nothing that you would really have to stress about or not, have to go the extra mile to get if you really, couldn't find it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it up. And while I'm cutting it up, I'm going to make a nice dice. I like them nice and small because remember, you're putting them outside the pierogi. So you're just going to want your sauce, your little dressing not to be too overpowering, but they're also going inside. So if you have really big chunks of bacon, you're going to have a hard time closing them and keeping them closed. So I'm just going to take these pieces and kind of pile them up like books, since we're in the bookstore here, and just get a tiny little dice going. And there's fat there, but that's going to render off in our pan. So like I said, I'm not going to tell, my Weight Watchers people about this recipe. It's comfort food at its finest. While I'm chopping away here, does anyone have any questions? I just threw a lot of information at you in a very short period of time. But if we're all good, then I guess it was all understandable, digestible. And this is also like a really fun project to do with kids because look, the pierogies, once you get them sealed and boiled, they don't have to be perfect. Everyone can have different sizes and shapes. And it's really great to get kids in the kitchen. One thing we definitely learned during COVID was just the fact that cooking is a majorly needed life skill because you never know when you can't order delivery or get to a grocery store regularly. So I'm really glad to hear how many people just really started getting into the kitchen and learning how to cook. I think that's a definite silver lining of the past year of our lives. All right, so I'm just dicing this up. And once it's nice and, I like to get it uniformly diced because again, like we said, where this is going to get really small and we want that because it's part of our filling. So I have a pan behind me. I think you can see. I'm going to get that going. And I'm just going to throw in a little bit of olive oil, even though the bacon has plenty of fat. The olive oil kind of just gets it started. It gives it a little bit of room to groove. And while it's grooving in there, because we just want that to render down on a low heat. That's the one thing that I think I really learned in culinary school. You don't ever need to put your stove on high heat unless you're making a steak. Medium to low is always the way to go. You won't burn things. I always tell my kids, you can always cook something more. Once it's overcooked, there's no going back. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw this in. And we're going to let that kind of do its business while we make the onion. So really simply, I'm going to take an onion.
Anna, we've got a question from Pamela. She says she has a Polish deli and bakery about 2 miles away from her. Is Polish bacon all she needs to ask for? Or is there a specific cut or kind?
It's so funny because when you go into the Polish store, they have a lot of smoked meats. If you say to them, which I actually did say to them today because I couldn't find it in the case. And I said, I'm so funny that she's asking this question because it happened to me today. And between the masks and the plexiglass and the language barrier, we were doing some crazy sign language in there. But no, just ask for the bacon for pierogies and they should know. But it's usually not, and they don't have to usually slice it. It comes in a nice big block like this, and it's usually in plastic wrap, just like you would find bacon. All right. So I'm just gonna let that render, but I'm so glad that you have they probably have some really great jelly donuts there too, which they call panchis. So when you're there, get some of those too for dessert. I wanted that recipe for the book and Monica's like, I don't make those. We just go get them at the deli. Those are a lot of work. And I was like, all right, I guess those aren't going in the book. Yeah, same thing with the onion. You can do it a couple of different ways. Monica sometimes finely minces it for inside the, ooh, this onion is, hold on. This onion got away from me. He's a little bit more pungent than usual. I'm usually not a crier. So she does two things. She minces it very small for inside, and then she makes really big rings for outside. I like it actually minced for both, because I just find when I'm eating it, I like it to be, you know, kind of smaller. But that is totally a personal preference of, you know, how you want your onion. But for the filling, like I said, I would definitely go with a very fine dice, little jewels, if you will, because they're going into that potato. All right, garbage bowl all that. Move this to the side, and I'm gonna get this guy in too with my bacon. And what we're really looking for, and don't worry, I'm gonna show you this once it's all cooked up, but what you're really looking for is just like what you would be looking for if you're cooking bacon on your for your family on Sunday. All that fat rendered out, you're gonna want a nice crisp on the bacon. And then we're simply gonna put half of it in and leave half of it out. And half of it's gonna be used once our pierogies are done and we're ready to dress them. Another great thing to know about the pierogies is you can half this recipe if you want, very simply, or have fun, make all of them, and they freeze beautifully. And it's funny because when I went to the store, the woman actually said, "You're gonna make them? We have so many in the freezer." And she did, she had a ton. I mean, she had sauerkraut filled, she had mushroom. I mean, she had really an entire freezer of pierogies. What Monica does is she just takes a big Ziploc bag. She puts a little olive oil on the inside, and so that she can easily slide them in. And then she just, you know, crimps it up. I like to put them on a baking sheet so they don't get on top of each other. Put it in the freezer, let them freeze. And then once they're, ooh, we have some bacon that just kind of took off. He left. Anyway, yeah, so then once they come out of the freezer, once they're frozen hard, then you can bag them upright, take the baking sheet out, and, you know, pierogies for days. And this crisps up really fast. And it's just really delicious. I'm gonna add a little sprinkle of salt, but you're gonna wanna be careful with the salt just because Polish bacon, I mean, regular bacon too, but definitely Polish bacon is salty, and you just don't want it overpowered. Same thing with the filling. The one thing I always tell people, again, the same thing with putting the heat up too high. Once you burn something, you can't go back. Once you over salt something, you usually also can't go back. So you're gonna wanna make sure that you taste as you go. So, you know, always give little taste as you go. And, you know, at the very end, if you need to add a little salt, go for it. Any other questions out there? All right, great. All right, so we'll just keep, I'm always worried I'm going too fast, but we have an accelerated group here. All right. All right, my bacon is looking good. Let it render just a little bit long. I'm definitely one of those, I like things always on the crisper side. I like my toast a little bit burned. I like my bacon a little extra crispy. So you do you. If you like things a little bit softer, like I have in my family, a couple of you like that. But like I said, I like things a little bit crispier. So I probably let things go a tiny bit longer than others. While you're doing that, in the back, I did get on a pot of salted water, and I'm gonna let that get boiled too. So you're putting salt everywhere you go so that they all come together and do what they need to do. But you also have to kind of keep, what's my assistant's name? That is Levi. And yes, he is my floor sweeper and mopper. So I will tell you, I rarely have to get the vacuum out in this area of my home. Sometimes a little bit slimy, but you know, we've talked to him about it. He's, you know, that's the way he cleans. And unfortunately, we can't really get him to change. His rate is good though, so we keep him around. All right, my bacon looks pretty good. And what I'm gonna do now, oh, and don't worry, Levi will make many appearances. Even at 10 o'clock during my demo last night when I was making meatballs. So he always knows what's on the menu, my Levi. All right, so what I'm gonna do is just take about half of this. And another thing with the bacon dressing is put in as much or as little as you want. It's up to you. You know, if you like things really super bacony, I can't help myself. I'm gonna use the outside bacon. I'm gonna let that crisp up a little bit more. But as you can, I think you can see, yes, you can see. As you can see, I'm just getting this in here and it's just gonna impart, you know, each pierogi is only gonna have a little bit of onion, a little bit of bacon, but what it's really doing is just flavoring up that potato because, you know, potato on its own doesn't really have much flavor. It's really a vehicle for all the other things in your life that you love. Sour cream, butter, salt, bacon. So we're just helping it along with the cheese. And, you know, true to form, I am gonna take a little bit, give it a little taste. It needs a little salt. I think it needs a little bit more pepper too. But that's why you taste as you go and you just make sure, because once it lands on everybody's dish, you can't really do anything. But if you just keep tasting as you go, and it's not, you know, it's not a watery dough. It's a nice firm dough. And if you kind of want to tackle this in a few days, just because it is, you know, it's a multi-step process, you can make this filling the day before, you can make the dressing the day before and just kind of leave it. And then when you're ready, make your dough and, you know, you fast forwarded through all this stuff, right? Another little, I love it. This is perfect. All right, I'm gonna move this out of our way. We're gonna change gears here, clean up this area. Just make sure that you can see what I'm doing. And we're gonna roll out some pierogies. First, I'm just gonna sprinkle my board. Like this.
So Andrea asked the question, can you buy pierogi dough already made or do you not recommend that?
You know, that's a really good question. I don't know if you could buy pierogi dough per se, but I don't see why you couldn't do this with wonton wrappers if you wanted. I know people sometimes make ravioli with wonton wrappers. I would be disowned from my Italian family, so I've never done it myself. But I've heard, and many people swear by it, making ravioli with wonton wrappers. They're thin, they're easy to manipulate. And if you wanted just that potato bacon flavor, you could get pretty close. I don't know. I will say when I was at the Polish store today, I definitely didn't see that. Sorry about that. So let's see here. So as you can see, this dough is very soft. I mean, it's actually softer than pizza dough, very supple, and it's all from that very, very fine flour coming together. So what I'm gonna do is I kind of got it into a little round. Oh, I should have said this, sorry, I got a little distracted. You're gonna take your dough and you're gonna separate it into 4. You're gonna keep 3 under the little blanket, and you're just gonna take out 1/4 of it. It just makes it more manageable. It keeps the other pieces of dough from drying out before you get there. And that's a good rule of thumb for anything. If you're making fresh pasta, dumplings, whatever, anytime you're working with dough, you always just want to work with what you're working with and let everybody else kind of hang out and rest. And now I'm just going to really get them as thin as I can. You know, it's funny when you do get them from the store pre-made, the dough is really thick. And you get a lot of dough in your bite. I think with anything, whether it's a dumpling or a ravioli, the thinner that dough and the more you can taste your filling, to me, that's when you've really hit it and really nailed it, because you're getting, you know, what we're all there for. You know, the dough is really just a vehicle for all that filling to get into your mouth. So, you know, especially if it's the first couple of times you make it, don't feel like you have to go super thin. Another thing that I love to do is, hold on, I'm just going to grab a fork just to show something real quick. So most people don't know this, nor should you, but the tins of a fork. Usually most fork makers, it's about 1/4 inch between 2 tins. So most doughs need to be about 1/4 inch. So if you take the tins of a fork, can you see this, Rachel? And if the dough is the size of the 2 tins, then you're where you need to be. All right, and you can take that and a token and get on the subway. All right, so Monica uses a glass because of course she does. I love using these, whatever you want. That's the other thing about these pierogies. Make them as big or as little as you want. Obviously, the smaller you make them, the more work you're going to be doing because you're going to be pleating a lot more dumplings, but it's completely up to you. If it's your first time making them, I suggest making them bigger just because you won't fall on the floor in exhaustion. And you will also learn the pleating process better, not be as overwhelmed. So we're gonna make them a nice size. And I'm just going around, and just like when you're cutting cookies, you want to make it so that you don't have a lot of waste. This can be re-rolled to make more. So you just kind of ball this back up, and then you do it all over again. But I'm going to take this little ball and I'm going to put it back under that cover because we don't want him to get upset and get all dried out. We want him to be happy. All right, I'm going to move these out of the way.
Andrea asks us, where did you buy the cutter and what is it called?
Oh, very good to know. So you can get these on Amazon or literally any kitchen supply store in the country has them. It's usually this brand, Ateco, and I got these in culinary school. Use them for everything. My kids want toad in a hole. If you know what toad in a hole is, you take a piece of bread, you cut a circle and you fry an egg in it. You use these. I use them for cookies, everything. They're wonderful. Definitely, once you own them, you'll use them. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and roll this out. And I'm still gonna keep that nice circle shape. Then I'm gonna take a cookie scooper. The reason I use a cookie scooper is I know that every one of my guys is gonna have the same amount of filling. So if I make all my pierogies the same size using the same cutter and I use the same amount of filling, then I'm going to be good. I'm going to be okay. I'm going to make sure that all my pierogies are uniform so that then when I'm cooking them, they're all going to cook at the same amount of time. So I'm going to take a little bit of my filling. I'm going to put it a little bit left to center, okay? Because I'm going to be flipping this over just like you would an empanada. I always say every country has a dumpling. That should be my second book because there's no place in this world that the people of that area didn't take some sort of dough, put something yummy inside and either boil or fry it. We've all done it, every ethnicity. It should really be part of world relations. All right, so now I've covered it like this. Now this is the really cool part. Now, if you're just starting out, all you have to do is pinch them. One really cool thing that Monica told me, I'm just going to share it with you, was that each family in her town or in her little area, and I'm sure this is kind of uniform through Poland, the pleat that the woman would use, of course she'd be judged on it because we all judge each other, but it also became like a family crest. So the women in the town would know who made the pierogies based on the pleat. And I don't know why, I just found that fascinating. Like it was like your family stamp. So I don't know that I have my personal pierogi stamp. What I like to do is I just like to pinch them. Can you see? Let me move back a little bit. I just like to pinch them because one, it looks really pretty when they're done. And when you're frying them up, it kind of catches all the little crevices in there. And I also know it's not going to open. So I'm just going to hold my little guy up. And there you go. So as you can see, then I kind of lay it down like this. And this is just totally an aesthetic thing, not necessary. But I lay it down because one, I can do another little pleat just to make sure, a little bit of insurance. And also it allows me to make it perfectly flat. So it just kind of looks like a pretty half moon. And there you have it. That's all you really have to this. It's not rocket science. Simple. And it's, for me, very, very cathartic, very therapeutic. And, I can kind of just, I think I don't meditate. I'm not a meditator, but I think when I'm cooking and I'm doing things like this, it's very meditative for me because I can just get, lost in my recipe. I can get lost in my pierogies. And that's it, everybody. That's a pierogi. What we're going to do now, I want to make a few up because I'm going to boil them up and then we're going to get them fried and we're going to show you the final dish. But as far as the hard work here, we're done. That's all she wrote. Just one more time, we got this down. We're going to roll it out just to kind of give ourselves some room to groove. Get a little scoop of the filling, left to center. Turn it over like that. Press down your filling so it's not in your way. Do your little pleating, just like that. Tap it down, extra little pleat. And then, there we go, another little pierogi done. So I already have 3 done. Let's check on my water. I'm gonna bring that back up to a boil. I turned that down a little bit, but it's nice and hot, so it'll boil fast. We won't be waiting around for water. And the nice thing about pierogi, much like, ravioli or dumplings, is they tell you when they're done. They float to the top. And then you could actually just take them out, toss them with a little butter and salt and serve them that way if you wanted, or, crisp them up in the pan with the onion and the bacon.
So one question that just came in is whether if you're going to freeze some, do you freeze them before or after boiling them?
So that's a great question. Monica does both. She says that she usually boils them first, which is why she puts that olive oil into the bag because they kind of slide all in. I personally, I don't like to do that. I don't know why. It's just a perfect personal preference, what I'm used to. Like with ravioli, I would never cook them first. I'd always just freeze them from, this state. But totally, whatever you want to do. I mean, if you do boil them ahead of time, it's that much faster, when you do go ahead to make them. So she said she's done both. I've definitely done this method. So I did ask her that question. All right, so what I'll do is I'll make one more and then we can drop them in the water. And mine are a nice hefty size. So if you want to, get ambitious and make them kind of small, what a great little appetizer, back to when someday in the future, when we get back to entertaining, you could actually serve these to guests as a little app. Okay. And I just, you don't have to do another. I just like to because I just feel like the thinner the dough, the easier it is for me to make my pleats. And again, to just make a nice hearty pierogi that I'm not gonna bite into a whole bunch of pasta. I'm gonna bite into and taste that filling right away. The other thing, as you go, like I'm noticing right now that my dough is getting a little bit sticky, which is not a bad thing because sticky dough you can always fix, hard dough you can't, is just take a little bit more of your flour and make sure that your board takes up that flour. And the minute you do that, your sticky dough will really rescue itself. It'll come back to, you know, workable and pliable for you. Has anyone made any other recipes from the book that they want to share that they do? I know David was so great. He's made a few things. He sent me pictures of his beautiful sons preparing. Rachel, you told me, was it the arroz con pollo your family really likes? Yeah.
Yes, yep.
My family
That's it.
loves that recipe too.
That's one of my kids' favorites. Yeah, we have that all the time.
It's so simple too, because you know, it's just kind of so hands off once you get going. All right. These look like they are ready.
There's a question here as well from Andrea. She says, are you using the Polish flour when you're rolling them out too?
Yes. Yes. I mean, you don't have to, but it's handy. It's here. I love this flour. I mean, it is just, I liken it to like Caribbean sand. It's just so fine and just really does whatever you ask it to do. So I love that. All right. I'm going to take my guys over here. Oh boy, I don't even know if I'm going to put these all in at once because these are some hefty pierogies. All right, let's see. Let's start with, I'm going to do 4. I'm not going to be too crazy. I'm going to do 4 to start. Now, of course, if you're feeding your family, you get a nice big pot and you wait till you're done. Now, what I did right now is after I threw them in, I gave the pan one little zhuzh. That's a technical term, zhuzh. And I gave it the one little zhuzh because I don't want them to stick to the bottom. After you do that, as my mom would say, don't touch. Don't touch anymore. Leave them alone. Let it sit along the bottom. That little swirl is going to ensure they're not going to stick to the bottom. And then when they're ready, they're actually just going to float up to the top. Now, I would say for this size, like in the book, it says 2 to 3 minutes. I would say just because I made these on the larger side, 3 to 4 minutes on these. But like I said, the pierogi is going to tell you when it's done. And remember, it's going to get a second cook when we put them in the pan. Let's talk about the pan we're going to use to fry. Now, I fried bacon and onion in here. I'm not going to throw those in because if I do that, they're not going to get a nice sear. The other thing I recommend, and you know, even as someone that's been cooking for a long time, anytime I'm frying dumplings or pierogies, anything that has a flour on it, I'm going to use a nonstick pan because then I know they're not going to get stuck to the pan and fall apart and make a mess. And then you're going to be cursing me from your home. Why did I go to that cooking demo? My pierogies are destroyed. So use a nonstick and you and I will remain friends forever. We grab a nonstick because of course I didn't. I put my nonstick here. It's going to be ready. My pierogies are going to cook over there. Sorry, I think I'm actually off camera. Sorry, I'm back. So what I'm going to do, and if you're doing these in a large pot, you can do up to 15 pierogi at once. Get them in there. They're not going to stick to each other. Just make sure you have a lot of water and a big pan. And the book actually tells you exactly how much more water you need for that amount of pierogi. I did a small pot just because I didn't want to, you know, overwhelm everybody. And these guys are already starting to float their way up to the top. You're just going to want to make sure that they're in there for 3 to 4 minutes because you want to heat up that filling. You want to make sure that because everything is cooked, you're not really making sure anything is raw. The only thing that's getting cooked right now is your exterior. But again, we're cooking that in the hot water right now. That's going to get floating to the top. And then we're going to go ahead and saute them in the pan. Did I answer all the questions we had outstanding? I think I did. Okay, great.
Yes.
All right, so sorry for my back. I'm gonna go ahead and take these babies out. And I'm gonna put them, you can put them in a dish. I just grabbed a bowl. And that's why, because you're pulling them out like this, you can just keep using that water. So while those are in there, I can pop 3 more in. So you can do a whole bunch, while you're cooking. And then at the very end, you can fry them. Remember, we're gonna do our zhuzh. I just put 3 more in. Make sure these guys don't stick to each other, to the side or the bottom. I have my 3 here. Now let's get them fried up. Heat up my pan, a little bit of olive oil. You don't need a lot because remember, we said this is a non-stick pan. I have a little bit of water in here. All right. We're gonna fry up the pierogies. We're gonna drizzle them. So remember, this isn't a sauce, it's a topping. We're gonna drizzle them with a little bit of onion, a little bit of bacon, and then that's it. That's it. It's not like some sauce that you're dousing it in. But like I said, you don't want to go the bacon route. You want to keep this vegetarian. Go ahead and just a little butter, a little salt, pepper. You will love them. And of course, if you really want to gild the lily, sour cream, because pierogies would not be complete without some sour cream, right? For my kids, it's really not that the dough is a vehicle for the potatoes. It's really the whole pierogi is a vehicle for how much sour cream they can get into their mouth. All right, those other ones are cooking. These are ready to go. My oil is shimmering. So what I'm gonna do is take my cooked pierogies, and remember, these are cooked. I'm gonna put them in the pan. Now they're gonna sizzle, that's okay. There's a little bit of water on that. Now I'm gonna put them flat side down. You'll see one side is, more rounded. Where we put that dough in, it's more rounded than the other side. The other thing is, if you remember, I tapped my pierogies on my counter to get the bottom flat. There's a method to that madness. Remember I told you I love everything crispy? So I love to cook pierogies on both sides, but then I also like to fry up that nice flat side. Not necessary, but highly recommended. And I'm not going to touch them because what's going to happen is once they start to crisp up, they're going to release on their own because I use my nonstick pan. Now you can do one of 2 things. If you're making a small batch, you can take a little bit of your bacon and onion topping and throw it in with your pierogies and let them all finish all at once. Or you can fry them all, put them on a platter, and then at the very end, put everything together. It's just based on whatever you want to do. All right, a few more minutes here. While those are frying, I'm going to take my other pierogies in the back out. And these guys are just going to wait their turn in line to go into the hot oil. All right, I'm going to give these a little flip. They're getting brown. And this, like I said, this again is totally up to you how long you fry them for. Traditionally, you're really not looking for a lot of color, but it's totally up to you. I love a crispy pierogi. So I'm going to put these in the pan. Get myself a little dish. Okay. Get my pierogies out. As you can see, that was quite quick. I'm gonna add a little bit of my bacon dressing to the top. All right, guys, there you have it. Pierogies, and it smells so good. I know people always say this if we only had smell-o-vision, but these are phenomenal and they're really easy. Just gonna break one open for you. You can see. And these are the perfect pierogies. Hot, totally steaming on the inside. Basically, you have a creamy bacon, onion, mashed potato inside of dough. It's carb on carbs. It's what life is all about, really. So anyway, I really appreciate you all being here. And if there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer.
Well, we're waiting to see if there are any last questions from the audience. I have one, which is, could you tell us a little bit about what gave you the idea for this book and how you got started creating it?
Yeah, so if you read the intro to my book, my whole family makes fun of me, but what I say is it all started with a meatball. Because what I really wanted to do was get all my mother's recipes written down. And we started a little family project to do that. And then I realized, you know, as a recipe tester, someone that had gone to culinary school, I actually had a talent at getting family recipes written down. So I put out an email to friends, you know, thinking a couple people would sign their mothers up, and it spread like wildfire. And I was actually traveling the country to meet with immigrant women to test their recipes and try, you know, get their stories. And it was just an amazing project that eventually someone said, my God, between the stories and the recipes, you have so much content here. What an amazing cookbook this would be. And that's all I really needed to hear. Because I said, yeah, how amazing would it be to have all these women represented together in a book? And, you know, did the whole pitch process, all the, you know, and I landed on HarperCollins and never looked back. And it's been great. And now during COVID, you know, kind of going around the country through Zoom, doing these demos, it's been wonderful. It's been wonderful. And meeting people that have bought the book and have cooked so many recipes from the book. You know, when I hear things like, oh, I don't even have to read the recipe anymore. Wow. You know, that's a dream come true for me. So.
Thank you, Anna. I think we're just about out of time, but there's one last question here from Karen. And she wants to know if you have a favorite nonstick pan.
I do actually. Let me show it to you. It's called Green Pan. I buy them from a company I actually work for, Food 52. I'm a recipe tester for them. I have been for years. It's a great site, and they started an online shop years ago. I don't know that you can get Green Pan anywhere else. You might be. I don't know. Amazon seems to have everything, but they last, and they also are non-toxic. So I love them for that as well.
And I would like to chime in with just a last comment, which is that, yes, please make the dumpling cookbook. That sounds amazing. So
yeah, we'll see someday. Got to be able to get out there and cook with grandmas again. So let's hope we get there.
Yes. Thank you, Anna. This has been amazing. Thank you, audience, for all being here. I said in the chat at one point, but it's true, I am extremely hungry now. So I think I'm not the only one. This was fantastic. We really appreciate you doing this with us.
Thank you so much. I've had such a wonderful time, and let's do this again sometimes, either here or in real life, hopefully. All the best, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Anna. You'll have a great night.
You too.